My dog wouldn't let me leave the house that morning. Not a bark, not a whimper. She planted herself in front of the door and growled at me like I was a stranger breaking in. That's what I remember most, the growl. Low and steady, like a warning siren that hadn't been invented yet. Her name is Rosie. She's a 7-year-old Beagle mix I adopted from the county shelter back when I was 26 and newly divorced and desperately needed something in my apartment that was alive and warm and didn't lie to me. She has never, not once in 7 years, growled at me. Not when I accidentally stepped on her paw. Not when I forgot to fill her bowl until 8 o'clock at night. Not ever. So when she did it that Tuesday morning, I stopped with my hand on the doorknob and stared at her. Rosie, move. She didn't move. She lowered her head and kept growling, her whole body tense like a coiled spring, eyes locked on me. I actually looked behind me to see if something was there. Nothing was. Just my kitchen, my coffee maker still dripping, my work bag on the counter. What has gotten into you? I tried to step around her. She shifted with me, blocking the door again. I tried the other side. Same thing. She was fast, and she was deliberate, and she was scared. I could see it now, past the growl in her eyes. She wasn't aggressive. She was terrified. I crouched down and tried to hold her face in my hands, the way I always do when she gets worked up during thunderstorms. She pulled back. Wouldn't let me touch her. Just kept that low, steady sound going in her throat. I had a 9 a.m. meeting I absolutely could not miss. I was 3 months into a new job at a mid-size property management company in downtown Columbus, still very much in the prove-yourself phase. And my manager, a man I will describe as the kind of person who notices when you're 2 minutes late but never when you stay 3 hours past 5, had specifically said this meeting was mandatory. Everyone from our department, no exceptions. My husband had already left for his shift. He's a nurse at the hospital across town, and his mornings start before mine. I texted him as I stood there in the hallway, kind of laughing about it. Rosie won't let me out the door. Literally blocking me. Growling. Has she lost her mind? He texted back within a minute. Lo, is she okay? She seems scared, but I don't know of what. Maybe she doesn't want to be alone. Give her a treat and go. I tried that. Rosie loves treats more than she loves most people. She sniffed the one I held out, looked at me, and turned her face away. I had never seen her do that in her life. I checked the time. I had 22 minutes to get downtown. Parking would be a nightmare if I left any later. I looked at Rosie and I said out loud to my dog, I have to go. I'm sorry. I'll be home by 6. She sat down directly in front of the door and stared at me with an expression I can only describe as grief. I moved her, gently, physically picked her up and moved her to the side, and I left. I told myself she'd be fine. I told myself dogs do weird things sometimes. I told myself I was a grown adult woman who couldn't be held hostage by a 7-year-old beagle on a Tuesday. I was 12 minutes from the office when my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. A Columbus area code, but not a contact in my phone. I almost didn't answer. I was merging onto 71, and the traffic was dense. I answered, Is this Joanna? A woman's voice, very controlled. The kind of controlled that sounds like someone actively working to not fall apart. Yes. Who's this? This is Dr. Renee Walsh. I'm the emergency coordinator at Mount Carmel East. I need you to come to the hospital as soon as you can. I felt the bottom of my stomach drop out. My husband. My first thought was my husband. What happened? Is my husband your husband is stable? She said quickly. He's stable, but there's been an incident at your building, and we have residents here, and we found your number listed as an emergency contact for Unit 4C. Unit 4C. That's us. That's our apartment. I don't. What kind of incident? A pause. Just long enough to be terrifying. There was a gas leak in the building, in the lower level. We're still getting information, but several residents who were present this morning have been brought in. I'm not able to give you details over the phone. Can you come in? I was already pulling onto the exit ramp. My hands were shaking so badly I had to grip the wheel with both fists. My mind was running through our building, a 5-story residential building near German Village, 12 units, people I saw in the elevator and the mailroom and the parking garage. The older couple on the second floor, who always had Christmas lights up until February. The young woman on 3, who I sometimes shared the elevator with, who was maybe 23 and always in scrubs. Probably a nursing student. The family on the 4th floor with the 2 little kids. I called my husband. He picked up on the first ring. Joe? What's wrong? Where are you right now? I'm at the hospital. I'm in the middle of. There was a gas leak at our building. Someone from Mount Carmel just called me. They said people were brought in. Silence. Then? What? When? I don't know. This morning. I'm on my way there now. My voice broke on the last word. I moved her, baby. I picked her up and moved her out of the way and left. And she knew. She knew something was wrong. He talked me in the rest of the way, kept his voice steady, kept me on the line, told me to drive carefully and that we'd figure it out when I got there. He was 45 minutes from the end of his shift. He said he was coming. The hospital was controlled chaos when I arrived. There's no other way to describe it. The ER waiting room had more people than a waiting room should, and there was a particular quality to the silence, the kind where everyone is holding something enormous and trying not to drop it. A woman near the window was crying quietly into a phone. 2 men I didn't recognize were sitting perfectly still, staring at the floor. A hospital administrator in a blue lanyard met me at the front desk. She brought me to a small consultation room and told me what they knew. The gas leak had started sometime in the early morning hours. A connection in the building's main gas line, in the basement utility room, had failed. The maintenance company that serviced the building had done work on it the previous week. Something wasn't sealed correctly. Gas had been accumulating in the lower levels since at least 4 or 5 in the morning. When the building's boiler cycled on at 6:47 a.m., there was an ignition. The explosion was confined mostly to the basement and the first floor, but the fire moved fast before the suppression system engaged, and the smoke was heavy, and not everyone got out in time. 3 residents were in critical condition. 2 more were being treated for severe smoke inhalation. The older woman from the second floor, I will call her my neighbor because that's what she was. A neighbor who once brought me soup when I had the flu and didn't know my name but smiled every time we crossed paths. She was in the ICU. The young woman in scrubs from the 3rd floor had not made it out. I sat in that room and I couldn't breathe. Not because of smoke, just because. The administrator was explaining something about the investigation and the building being condemned pending inspection and temporary housing resources available through the city, and I was nodding, but I wasn't hearing any of it. I kept thinking about Rosie, about how I had picked her up and physically moved her out of my way, about how she had looked at me when I walked out the door. My husband arrived at the hospital still in his scrubs. He didn't say anything when he found me. He just sat down and put his hand over mine, and we stayed like that for a long time. By early afternoon, we knew more. The fire investigator had determined the point of origin. The maintenance company's work order from the prior week was already being pulled. Our building manager, a man who had ignored 3 separate written complaints from residents over the past year about the smell of gas near the basement laundry room, had been placed on administrative leave pending the investigation. Our neighbor from the 2nd floor survived but lost significant lung function. She would spend 6 weeks in the hospital and require ongoing respiratory care. The young woman from the 3rd floor was 24 years old. She had moved into the building 8 months ago. She was, in fact, a nursing student at Ohio State. Her name was on a memorial that went up outside the building within days, surrounded by flowers from people who knew her and people who didn't. I think about her a lot. I think about the randomness of it, that she was on the 3rd floor and not the 4th, that she was home that morning and not at class, that she was 24 and had 8 months left of school before she would have been a nurse. I think about all the things that converged to put her in that building at that moment, and I think about all the things that converged to keep me out of it. I couldn't go back to the building for 2 weeks while the investigation was ongoing and structural assessments were being done. We stayed with my in-laws in Westerville, sleeping in the guest room with Rosie between us on the bed every night. On the third night, I was lying there in the dark listening to my husband breathe, and I started doing the math. I leave for work at 8:20 on a normal Tuesday. The explosion happened at 6:47 a.m. I would have been long gone. I wouldn't have been in the building. But the smoke started at 6:47. The fire alarms went off. The evacuation happened in those minutes right after, and the stairwell on our side of the building was on the ground floor, near the basement entrance. If I had left at 8:20, I would have been gone. If I had left at my normal time, I was never in danger. So why did Rosie stop me? I've turned this over and over in my mind for months. My husband, who is a rational, science-minded person who has been a nurse for 11 years, has a theory. He says that dogs can smell gas in concentrations far below what humans detect. We're talking parts per million, levels our noses aren't built to register. He thinks Rosie smelled it coming through the building's ventilation, through the walls, under the door. He thinks she smelled something wrong and she did the only thing she knew how to do, which was to stand between me and the outside world and refuse to move. There's research that supports this. Dogs' olfactory systems are, depending on the study, somewhere between 10,000 and 100,000 times more sensitive than ours. They can detect certain cancers. They can sense seizures before they happen. They can smell structural fires in their earliest stages. The idea that Rosie smelled a gas accumulation several floors below us and understood, on some instinctive level, that something was wrong. I believe it. I believe it completely. What I didn't know at the time, what I couldn't have known standing there with my hand on the doorknob, was that my leaving wouldn't have put me in danger anyway. If I had just gone to work like I planned, I probably would have been fine. I would have missed the explosion entirely. But Rosie didn't know that. She only knew what she could smell. She only knew something was wrong in the building and she was not going to let me walk out into it. She stopped me because she couldn't tell me why. She stopped me because that's all she had. There are things I've done differently since that morning. We have gas detectors in every room now, not just the one that came standard with the apartment, but 3 of them. The kind that test for natural gas and carbon monoxide and communicate with each other. My husband replaced the batteries in our smoke detectors the same week we moved back in. We found out which maintenance company our new building uses and what their licensing and inspection history looks like. We talked to our building manager, a different one now at a different building, and asked directly about the utility room maintenance schedule. We also filed a complaint with the Ohio Utility Contractors Board about the company that did the original work. We were not the only ones. The civil investigation was still underway as of the last time I checked, and the building management company has been named in multiple lawsuits from affected residents and the family of the young woman who died. I don't know how that will end. I know it won't bring her back. I know my neighbor from the second floor uses supplemental oxygen now when she sleeps. I know there are people in our former building who lost things they can't replace, photographs, documents, items that can't be itemized on an insurance claim because they don't have a dollar value. We got our things back after 3 weeks. Most of it was fine. Our unit was on the 4th floor, and the fire damage was concentrated below us. Mostly smoke and water damage on the first 2 floors. We lost some furniture, some clothes, a bookshelf full of things I'd had since college. Nothing irreplaceable. We knew that, and we felt guilty knowing it. Rosie's food bowl survived without a scratch. I'm telling this story because of something that happened last month. I was at a cookout at my sister-in-law's house. A casual Saturday afternoon thing. Maybe 15 people. Kids running around in the yard. One of her neighbors was there. A woman I'd met once or twice before, who had recently gotten a puppy. A big, clumsy golden doodle named something I can't remember, maybe 6 months old. all pause and enthusiasm. The woman was laughing about how the puppy had been behaving strangely that week. Acting skittish in the kitchen. Barking at the stove. She'd checked the stove. Everything looked fine. She thought maybe it was the new dishwasher making sounds that bothered him. I put my drink down. "Can I ask you something?" I said. "When did this start?" She thought about it. "Sunday? Maybe Saturday night. Does your house have gas appliances?" She looked at me. "The stove is gas." "Why?" I told her to call her gas company's emergency line before she went home that night and ask them to come check her connections. I told her it was probably nothing, but it might not be nothing, and that a service call costs you an hour of your time and $0 in most cases if you're just asking them to inspect. She texted me 2 days later. There had been a small leak at the connector behind the stove. The technician said it had likely been there for some time. He fixed it in 20 minutes. She has a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old in that house. I told Rosie about it when I got home. I sat on the kitchen floor with her and held her face in my hands, and this time she let me. She licked my chin and then tried to steal my sock, because she is still Rosie, still exactly who she's always been. I don't know what she knew that morning. I don't know if she understood, on any level, what the smell meant or what would happen. I don't think it matters. What matters is that she knew something I didn't, and instead of staying quiet about it, instead of just pacing nervously or whimpering or waiting for me to figure it out on my own, she put her 12 pounds of self directly between me and the door and refused to move. I've thought a lot about what it means to trust something when you don't fully understand it. My husband trusts patient instincts all the time. The feeling that something is off before the labs confirm it. The sense that a patient is declining before the monitors show it. He calls it clinical intuition. But he also calls it experience, pattern recognition, the body's ability to process information faster than the conscious mind can articulate it. Rosie had that. She had information I didn't have, and she communicated the only way she could. And I almost overrode it for a meeting about Q3 property maintenance schedules. If you have a pet and they are trying to tell you something, please listen. Not because every bark is a prophecy, not because animals are magic, but because they are paying attention to things we've trained ourselves to tune out, and sometimes, what they're picking up on is real and it matters, and it's worth 5 minutes of your time to take seriously before you pick them up and move them out of your way. Check your gas connections. Test your detectors. Replace them every 5 to 7 years, not just the batteries. Know where your building's utility shutoffs are. Know your maintenance company's name. These are small things and they take almost no time, and they are the difference, sometimes, between a close call and something that can't be undone. I am sitting in my new apartment right now, 3 miles from the old one, typing this on my laptop. Rosie is asleep on the couch next to me with her chin resting on my knee, making the small snuffling sound she makes when she's deep under. The gas detector on the kitchen wall has a green light. The one in the hallway has a green light. She saved me from something I didn't even know was coming. I will spend the rest of her life making sure she knows she's loved. I've spent a lot of time thinking about what it actually means to pay attention. Not the performative kind. Not the kind where you're nodding along while your mind is already 3 steps ahead, already in the parking garage, already rehearsing what you're going to say in the meeting. I mean the real kind. The kind that costs you something. The kind that requires you to slow down when everything in you is pushing forward. Rosie paid attention that morning. I didn't. And I don't say that to punish myself. I've done enough of that already. I say it because there's something worth sitting with in the difference between the two of us standing at that door. She had information. She communicated it the only way she could. I had a meeting and a parking situation and 11 years of trained instinct telling me that animals do weird things sometimes and life goes on. I chose the meeting. I chose the parking situation. I moved a 12-pound dog out of my way like her urgency was an inconvenience. The thing about cause and effect is that it doesn't care about your intentions. The gas was leaking whether I believed it or not. The building was already compromised before I woke up that morning. The maintenance company made their mistake days before any of us knew there was a mistake to be made. None of that waited for me to be ready, or informed, or paying attention. It just happened. And the people who were in the wrong place at the wrong time bore the consequences of choices that weren't even theirs. That's the part that stays with me. The young woman on the third floor didn't make any mistakes. She was just home. She was 24 years old and 8 months from finishing nursing school, and she was just home on a Tuesday morning. And that was enough. I think about what it means to move through the world responsibly when so much of what can hurt us is invisible. In the walls, in the pipes, in the systems we trust because someone else is supposed to be managing them. We outsource our safety constantly. We assume the maintenance is done correctly, the inspections are current, the connections are sealed. Most of the time they are. And then sometimes they aren't, and we find out the hard way, and by then the finding out has already cost something irreplaceable. What I've learned, not as a lesson someone handed me, but as something I had to earn the hard way, is that paying attention is not passive. It's a choice you make every single day, often in small moments that don't feel important at the time. It's the choice to take 5 minutes to test the detector, to ask the question you feel slightly embarrassed asking, to listen when something feels off, even if you can't explain why, to not move the dog. Rosie knew something was wrong before she had language for it. She just acted on what she knew. There's a kind of intelligence in that, a clarity that doesn't require explanation or justification or a meeting that can be rescheduled. She just knew, and she stood her ground, and she trusted that standing her ground was enough. I want to be more like that, more willing to trust the thing I'm sensing before I can fully articulate it, more willing to slow down and take the signal seriously even when the calendar says otherwise, more willing to ask the uncomfortable question of my landlord, my maintenance company, myself. And I want to be the kind of person who, when someone tells me their dog has been acting strange near the stove, puts down my drink and asks the follow-up question. Because that's what it costs. A question. A few minutes. The willingness to take something seriously before it becomes a tragedy. We all have a responsibility to the people around us. And sometimes that responsibility looks like showing up in the big, obvious ways, and sometimes it looks like texting a neighbor to get their gas line checked. Both matter. Both are real. Rosie is asleep next to me right now. Green lights on both detectors. I check them every morning now the way I check my phone. It takes 4 seconds. It costs nothing. It's the least I can do.